Moving on with my videos. Welcome back to another episode of Full Circle with me, Onyx. And I'm going to start talking about the magical language of magic, wizards. So it's really interesting how religious people want to understand magic. And really, we should look to creative people, artists, poets, musicians, dancers, singers, creators. Um, Artists are already tapped in to the magical live stream, and they're bringing other dimensions from the quantum level into this reality. However, due to filters, personality, and other things, a lot of that material gets distorted through the personal filter of the artist. Alex Gray is kind of a spiritual mystic artist um, who's really kind of brought spirituality and art together to give you an idea of what's going on in the creative mind. You know, it's a third eye experience. The closest thing to an artist is a mystic. And mystics have been referred to basically of the fountainhead of the magical experience. So, as someone who's wanting to learn magic, um, Carlos Castaneda's books, Don Juan, his teacher of unknown origins, basically said poetry was the closest thing you could get to the highest levels of shamanism slash magic. Um, it's like the best, closest roadmap to these other limitless realms. Poets were already tasting it, where these advanced shamans who've now become sorcerers are existing in it. And so the mystic and the poet, the mystic and the artist are one and the same. The methods produce different things. The mystic just ends up being more into the creative state. They just want to stay in that creative energy, that euphoria, that bliss, that nirvana, that enlightenment. And the artist is actually, whether they realize it or not, besides tasting that same samadhi, they want to embody it and bring it to the world. They want to bring that Promethean fire back. And that happens, and we do it collectively through mythology. We do it collectively when, like a choir singing, or we build a house of worship like a temple or a synagogue. We also do it collectively with a coliseum and a sports auditorium. We do these. So when we look at things, these big old collective things that we create for all of us to share, humanity as a collective has the ability to be a poet, has the ability to be all these things as well. But we can also experience that on the individual level. So we have a lot of horizontal people living in a very low bandwidth or hyper concentrated linear wave. Uh, we call them rational and thinking. Uh, we cut out a lot, and it just becomes so little. And so we approach symbols and sigils, magical formulas, and rituals in such a reduced form. There's not much to it. Then it requires you to build all this energy. It requires you to put in all this work, because what you're handed is like a 4-year-old scribble of advanced magical practices through the grimoires, through tradition, through all this talk and chatter and cosplay effect. You're basically left you and the universe. What what is it that links you? In the previous video, we learned how to align ourselves to create a bridge to the other side, crossing the worlds vertically by obviously getting in tune with your body, bring all that energy back to you, grounding, centering, feeling present in the now, opening up. So we've aligned one bridge, but now magic is a form of communication, especially when you get into wizardry. What is math? We have to communicate, whether from we communicate physically, we touch, we hug, we make noises, uh, we eat together, we sleep together. This is all physical language. We live together. And then emotionally, we share emotions and we convey sensations for better and for worse, you know? So we emotionally communicate. And then we energetically communicate through impulses of energy, positive, negative, strong, shallow, all different kinds. And then we share with words. And so, really, so much relating goes on these super highways of communication of different frequencies, different ways to communicate. And if the subject and object get each other and communicate well, understanding is conveyed, then the appropriate work action is done. So it's like the other bridge you are creating is through symbols, images. And so if you have, and so as long as your image can convey your intent, your feeling, your attitude, your desire, you are essentially making magic. You're writing a ritual. You are performing it. So we do a lot of magical speaking, creation, without being conscious of what we're doing. We're using ordinary words and we're discounting it as having a universal effect or an effect that will come back to you like a tidal wave and wipe you out. Uh, we started to understand it through the idea of karma. And then we kind of understand it a little bit with fear slash superstition, that you should watch what you say and don't offend others, or the truth always has ways of getting out, or what you say always comes back to bite you, or in a closed system, whatever you say has to return to sender, or the boomerang effect, where you're getting an understanding of principles at play. But for the magical purpose of this video, it was really about art, images, symbolic expressions. This is more on the experience of being you. So I'm sad, you're sad, right? But you experience sadness in your own way. And then we could both agree that we're sad, but if we had like a special device that showed the color of sadness and the images of sadness, they might look very different. So agreement, understanding on a base level is kind of essential, but it's all very nuanced and very personalized. So what is this video about? You know, it's symbols, it's expression, it's abstract, it's poetic, it's art. And if you aren't these things, you're missing the biggest bridge. And so could you understand all these people wanting access to magic or art, and they're not artistic. So they're going to religion. They're going into occult practices where someone has made a recipe cookbook grimoire and says, light this candle with this color on that day, aligned with this planet, for that goddess represented, you're going to get your man. So you get belief, placebo, and a recipe to empower you. Yeah, that's all right. But wouldn't you really like to write magic and have your own language? Wouldn't you really like to commune with the entities and have it work out? Then you have to understand. So, in order to communicate, you have to link up first. With object and subject must link. There's an energetic link. Everyone, all the New Agers are afraid of chords. Cut this chord, cut that chord. They're haphazardly cutting chords, and they don't realize, they don't see the bigger picture, that you're messing up the spider web's pattern. You're resisting. So first, just accept. You can allow it to be. You're going to create a chord with the entities that you're going to connect with, or bridges. If our consciousness can't link up, and there is not what is referred to as an empathic link, then the understanding of what you're trying to signal to the universe, signal to yourself, your own power source, signal to your environment, objects that must be moved and changed, isn't going to work. So we have a whole bunch of like really afraid people out there doing magic against, to protect and block, and I'm like, the foundation principle is sympathy and symbols. You start moving into high magic as soon as you use symbols. Symbols represent the active forces. You stay in lower magic when it's not symbols. It's, I got a lock of her hair, I got this herb, and I got this candle. You move into high magic when you write that person's name down. That name is a symbolic representation of that person. So you're moving into the realm of thought language. So a lot of people are playing on multiple fronts to do their magical attacks. They're like, I'm going to empathically send the hate vibe. I'm going to mentally send an image of a knife stabbing whoever that is. And then I'm going to speak the words of violence upon that person. And you're going to repeat it 3 times. And so you're working on multiple planes or channels to get your job done. You could concentrate it all on one. Some people like to just emotionally stab and then pretend they didn't do it, and then wonder why so-and-so doesn't show up to work tomorrow because of their stomach ache. That was you performing black magic. That was you getting your revenge. So in the name of accept all, yeah, accept your dark side, accept what you're doing, be very revealing how much magic you're actually doing. How many curses are you actually cursing? How many negative things are you doing? And then you just discount it. So I'd say every light wizard is a dark wizard first. Every spiritual person is a dark wizard first, or an evil witch. And it's because we're unconscious of the shadow material and what we're doing and saying under our breath. When you hold someone in contempt because they're not obeying your personal selective rule book, you feel justified in going to your grave hating someone, ignoring them, not giving them love, treating them differently. Those are all rituals. Those are all behavioral moves on a chessboard. It was strategy. Those are all techniques of manipulation to get someone in or out of your life. So you're doing magic all the time and you're operating on different levels. a lot of it just isn't effective. So you consider it random in everyday life. A lot of it is you messing up the pattern. Has less to do with belief, has less to do with faith, it has less to do with knowing more or getting a hold of that deity or goddess or correct herb, has more to do with becoming understanding that you are a part of the web of life. You are a part of the web that psychically connects us all. And so, with this realization, you start to cross another bridge, a bridge out of ignorance and being human to moving towards semi divine. Because you're like, wait a minute, I am connected to the sun, I'm connected to the earth, I'm connected to humanity, I'm connected to my body. The reality, existence is connection. And now, because you're becoming more conscious, you might alter your words. You might be more selective. And so the psychic eye is awareness. You become aware, you become conscious, you become discerning. So, how do you know if your third eye is opening? You're becoming more aware. You're seeing the big picture. You're like, if I say this, it's going to affect that person. They may have trauma the rest of their life. So then I practice some self discipline and I don't say that. And then I do some self reflection. Why was I doing that? Don't I understand that we're all one? Don't I understand that we're all interconnected? Don't I understand that everyone's purpose is different? Don't I understand that every time I'm feeling afraid, scared, angry, violent, repulsed, grossed out, that has to do with my rule book. That has to do with my rule book of judgments, the way I define the world, my construct. It has nothing to do with the other person. So you start really managing yourself professionally. That's what I love it. Um, and then, and so you start to become very refined, very adult in your interactions with people. You become very discerning. You pause, you reflect, you take time, you're less impulsive. And this is all naturally happens because you're really starting to understand how you have the power to affect and change the world with your interactions. You being in the world, you create change for better and for worse. Now let's kind of move more into that language. So when we move into higher consciousness, it's not as rigid, it's not as narrow. It gets poetic, it gets abstract, it gets colorful, it gets descriptive. And so being at a lower bandwidth, being at a lower consciousness, when someone starts reading you advanced, wonderful poetry, you don't get it. And you keep trying to turn it back into a dictionary. When you're given advanced symbols, higher consciousness symbols, you try to bring it down and make it the universal Encyclopedia Britannica. You're trying to take one system that's designed for a greater universe, a greater level of communication, a more bonded way of expression with you and magic, with you and your deities, your gods, with you and your pet, you and your own body. And you keep trying to convert it to this lower grade to understand it because you want it to make sense to your physical brain. But higher magic isn't made for your physical brain. It's made for your creative brain. It's made for your intuitive brain. So a lot of people stay in instinct, rooted in your biology and collective inheritance of humanity as responses, conditioned responses, patterns, and you're using that instead of intuition. You're using lower emotions of judgment, not understanding that you constructed the whole model of right and wrong since childhood. You adopted some of those parts, but you wrote in some of those parts. You had agreements. So it's very basic psychology. Your feelings aren't accurate. Your instincts aren't accurate. And the way you move around and what is socially acceptable in the time period are very restrained. And now you want to go magical. And magic is not instinctual like that. It wasn't programmed instincts. It wasn't programmed lower emotions. It wasn't programmed judgment belief systems of right and wrong, good and bad, heaven, hell. You deserve this, you don't deserve that. And those are your lower chakras. Yeah, clear them out. But now we're moving into something creative. Like you can't. So love is a foreign object to you. Compassion, universal oneness, eternity, infinity, existence, wonder, awe, and feeling blessed, feeling guided. These words become abstract and you can't digest them. You may flirt with them a little bit, but there's no digestion going on. So you're not getting the full understanding of it. So you're trying to take in a larger bandwidth, you're trying to take in a deeper, stronger frequency of what you've ordered, but you're not a system that can process that. Hence, your mind needs to grow and you need to do more music, play more art, be more creative, have more fun, and do all these and have more experience under your belt in so many diverse ways for that consciousness expansion to happen. So you get what you asked for, but for you it's a seed. But what it's giving to you is actually the whole tree, or you get the whole flower. You got the outcome. You're having visions and dreams about your happily ever after. But all you could process was in the lower, a concentrated seed form. So then it must unfold in time. There must be a cycle, there must be a process, there must be graduating steps of consciousness for you to receive what you asked for. So everything that you've asked for, you've already received it. Everything that you want, you already are. It's in the expanded level. So in order to get there, you have to start speaking an expanded vocabulary of poetry, of description, of artistic. And you really need to connect with it. Like, I really connect with the word transcendence. I connect with the word tranquility. They're more than just words, they're experiences that I have experienced, connect with. They're words that define, clarify something. It's a sensation, it's an awareness, my mind knows it. So that word gets to be in my vocabulary a powerful abstract word that can have a magical effect, a brain changing chemical effect on me. That word can be a drug. When I hear the word transcendence, I immediately can go to that state. You know, if you've had a real encounter with an angel, it's not a concept for your brain to dissect, to bring down to 3D. And I don't need to identify it with a superstitious mythology. I don't need to Christianize it. I'm like, oh yeah, I met an angel, and the first thing he did was show me the light and the darkness is one, the good and the evil. And I was like, of course, that's my angel. And it was the experience more important than anything else. the experiences. Uh, but I know that, so you start to create a vocabulary. That vocabulary must be connected on different levels for you. And so creative, abstract, poetic, symbolic metaphors is the language of the expanded universe. It's the language of creativity. It, it's not so rigid. Um, it's more, you're seeing more dimensions, more sides and facets of that. So, 3D human life, you see one face of the diamond. The more mystical you get, the more magical you get, the more angles you see 3 or 4 or 5 or 8 sides of that diamond, of that experience. And when you're living and experiencing these different sides of this diamond, you're like going to God consciousness. You're going to samadhi. And and when you're speaking from all 8 sides of those at once, you know, is kind of what I'm saying. Notice how for you to even understand it, we had to open up your brain a little bit for me to help you understand. So now you understand things can be more layered. Things can also be viewed from more sides, more perspectives at once. They can all be correct, but there can be a totality of this correctness. There could be this expanded experience. Imagine you working with eight faceted sides of that diamond. When you were looking at one that was like a book that was given to you, or one that was a mentor showing you the way. You know, now you're going to work with eight dimensions of consciousness, 8 dimensions of viewing, 8 dimensions of speaking. You couldn't help but have more power. You couldn't help but create change in unknown ways, viewed from an outsider as sorcery and magic. This is wizardry. This is like being a being that professional of your craft. This is like a master pianist. This is a master vocalist. They're hitting notes and ranges. They're moving fluid. It looks so easy and natural. It looks spontaneous. It took practice, and there was natural talent. And through their practice and their experience, they're able to connect the dots and work multidimensionally. They can do it on the 3D level horizontally, but they've also are working vertically on the spiritual axis. So they got the bridge going. This is what's missing in your magic. This is what's missing in your mythology. This is what's missing in your gods. This is what's missing in your culture. This is what's missing in your own identity. So, wouldn't it be cool to know that you're a flower and see more than one petal, but to see all of them around you? Wouldn't it be cool to see all of yourself? Wouldn't it be cool to see?